Hello and welcome back, everybody. We had an insane Saturday filled with top 10 upsets. Um, so we're hoping this Saturday can follow through. We've got a couple big games that we'll talk about, but it'll be hard to live up to the hype of last Saturday. Um, we officially have a name, Orange Cat Football Chat. So we've got that to look forward to. I've got some news on the one chip challenge front. So last week I told you if we finish the year negative, that I'll do the one chip challenge. Well, now if we finish the year positive, producer Daniel's going to do the one chip challenge. So after last week, things aren't looking great for him. We had a great week last week. We came into the week down zero point 0.4 units. Now we're up 1.1 unit. So we're hoping to keep that momentum rolling, get some good wins this Saturday, and get even farther in the positive. Make him do the one chip challenge. So hopefully it'll work out, but we'll have to see. So just getting into what happened last Saturday. Bama lost to Vandy. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. Mizzou, who I told you is a fraud, lost big time to A&M 41-10. Michigan lost to Washington, and USC lost to Minnesota. So starting off, I got to gloat a little bit more. I told you Missouri was a fraud. They went down to College Station and just got their teeth kicked in. From the very start, it was a blowout. Missouri had no chance in this game. Final score 41-10. This was a pick your score for Texas A&M. Missouri didn't belong in the same stadium as Texas A&M, and A&M is not that at the top tier of college football. Missouri already struggled with Boston College and Vandy. So if you're Missouri right now, yes, you have a weak schedule, but you still have to beat Oklahoma, and you've got a tough game against Bama. You're not going to beat Bama, so you're looking at best case scenario. You beat Oklahoma and you win the rest of your games and go 10-2. For Missouri, that's probably good enough for the college football playoff. But given how they played against A&M, they're not going to beat Oklahoma. They're extremely overrated still. They're just not an elite team. They're probably an average power 4 team. If you took them and put them in the ACC, Big 10, or Big 12, they wouldn't win any of those conferences. They'd finish middle of the pack in pretty much all of those conferences. They have a very favorable SEC schedule where the only top tier team they play is Bama. They don't play Georgia. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play Texas. So you miss all of the good teams in the SEC, and Texas A&M was arguably their second hardest game in the SEC, and they got blown out. So if you're a Missouri fan, it's not looking great for you. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. This is kind of a gut check for Tennessee. Your top 5, you're looking like this might be the year you're finally back, and then you go on the road and you lose to Arkansas. Now, Arkansas might be a little better than people think. One of their losses, Oklahoma State, they outgained Oklahoma State by about 300 yards, so that's kind of a fluke loss there. So they could surprise some people and have a pretty decent season. After that, talking about Michigan, Washington, I told you all that Alex Orji, he had something like 67 passing yards last week. This week he got benched. He had 15 passing yards in the entire game. I think he got benched midway through the second quarter. And their backup Tuttle came in, had 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That wasn't enough to beat Washington. So if you're Michigan, you're going to need a lot better play out of your quarterback if you want to compete at anywhere near the level they competed last year. They still have a pretty tough schedule coming up, and it's looking very likely that they could finish 7-5 or 8-4. So it's going to be a tough road for them from here on out. And then getting into the biggest upset of the week, Bama goes on the road to Vandy. They don't really go on the road because Vandy Stadium is 75% Bama fans, so it's essentially a home game away from home. They go to Vandy and they lose. They lose 40-35 in a game where you kept thinking, all right, Bama's going to pull away here and beat them. And then Vandy would just come back, score again, take the lead. And if you're looking at this, you're going to hear a lot of things about Vandy. You're going to hear a lot of things about how they're better. They're a better team this year, that it's a different Vandy. It's not your granddad's Vandy. It's the same Vandy. People are going to tell you that they're a lot better than they are, that, this isn't as big of an upset as it is because Vandy's actually a decent team this year. They're not. They lost to Georgia State. They played a decent Missouri team, and by decent, I mean average Power 4, close, but ultimately lost. They beat an overrated Virginia Tech team who has looked horrible throughout the rest of the year, except for that Miami game. So people are going to try and tell you Vandy's actually a decent team this year, and they're just not. They're not a good team. They're going to probably lose to Kentucky this week. Remember, the over-under win total for this team was something like 2.5 games. Now, they've already hit that, but people are treating them like they're a top 25 team and that they're a legit team. They're just not. They've gotten a few lucky breaks, and they pulled off an upset. Now, on the flip side of that, talking about Bama, if you look back to last year with Kalen DeBoer at Washington, they went 8-0 in one-score games. They had 8 one-score games, and they won every single one of them. The year before that, 4-2, and then the year before that at Fresno State, 4-2 again. So he's had 6 or more one-score games in his last 3 years. He's already at 2 this year. That's not how you build an elite team. That's not how you build an elite program. Looking at Kirby Smart at Georgia, last year 2-1 in one-score games. The year before that, 2-0. The year before that, 21, 1-0. 2020, 2-0. The way you build an elite program is by blowing teams out, is by not leaving it up to chance. Kalen DeBoer has won 77% of his one-score games. That's not a sustainable number. If you look at Nick Saban at Alabama, his win percentage in one-score games was 63%. So if you're looking at one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he has a 63% win percentage in one-score games, and then you're looking at Kalen DeBoer, you either have to say Kalen DeBoer is the greatest coach we've ever seen, which I don't believe that, or he's gotten a little lucky in his last few years to go 8-0, 4-2, and 4-2. So, and this is leaving out the USF game. That wasn't a one-score game, but it very well could have. USF was in that game late. So you might have some questions about whether Kalen DeBoer can actually build an elite program that can just bulldoze teams the way Nick Saban did and the way Kirby Smart does. So keep an eye on that, because a lot of those one-score games he had last year at Washington, they weren't against elite competition. They were subpar Pac-12 teams. So you're starting to have questions over whether he can actually blow teams out or if he's just gotten a little lucky in one-score games. So we're going to see how that works out for him. They play South Carolina this week, and we're going to talk about that a little more, because I actually, if we're talking about upset potential, that's probably a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me. It is at Alabama, which is going to help him out tremendously, but starting to have questions about Kalen DeBoer and how every game seems to end up being a one-score game. And the last couple of years, he's gotten pretty lucky in those. At some point, the luck runs out, and you start to go near 500 in one-score games. So We talked a little bit about it earlier. We're plus 1.1 in terms of betting units right now. So let's get into the bets we have this week. First, we have Rutgers minus 125. They've had a pretty good year so far. I think they're going to continue that. After that, we've got UMass plus 27.5 versus Missouri. Until Missouri proves me wrong, I'm going to keep betting against them. We bet on Texas A&M last week. It worked out. I don't believe in Missouri. Now, UMass is a very bad team. They're 1-4, I believe. They're not a very good team, but this will be an interesting game. Ohio State money line against Oregon. I don't think Oregon has the firepower to beat Ohio State. Ohio State has one of the best rosters in the country. They've just been bulldozing people all year. They haven't played anyone legit yet. This will be their first true test on the road. The time zone change is going to be a little difficult for them to manage, but I don't think it'll be too much of a factor here. So I'm thinking Ohio State goes into Eugene and gets the job done. Cincinnati plus 125 at UCF. We talked about UCF a little bit, and ever since I called them out, they've been losing. So I think that train's going to continue. Scott Satterfield, not an elite coach, but he does get the job done occasionally. So I'm on Cincinnati here to beat UCF. And then finally, USC plus 142 at Penn State. Versus Penn State. This game's at USC. Penn State is undefeated the last couple of years against teams not named Michigan or Ohio State. USC isn't elite right now, but I do think they'll beat Penn State. I think Penn State's a 3.5 point favorite here. I think it's going to be a little more difficult for them going into USC than they're used to. I think USC is a little bit better than the competition not named Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten. So while I don't think USC is at that level where, they're going to beat Penn State every year, I do think when Penn State goes to USC, it's going to be quite difficult for them to win that game. So we're on USC this week. That's all we've got for this week. Hopefully this Saturday can live up to the hype of last Saturday, but we're going to have to wait and see. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all next week.